You might think 911 is reserved for life or death emergencies, but for these shoppers, a sold-out turkey warrants a SWAT team response. Imagine a grown man calling the police on himself because he panicked at a self-checkout screen, or a woman demanding an officer arrest a seagull for stealing a French fry. From a shoplifter asking cops to fix his flat tire so he could flee, to a customer reporting a ghost in the ceiling, these are the 49 most insane and absolutely real police calls that will make you question humanity. 1. An anxious middle-aged father decided to use the self-checkout lane at a busy superstore to save some time. He placed 2 small organic avocados on the digital scale and typed in a random code. The screen suddenly flashed a total of $400 for the fruit. He froze in sheer terror. He truly believed he had committed a serious financial crime against the store. He did not ask an attendant for help. He dialed 911 immediately with trembling hands. He told the confused dispatcher he was being held hostage by a machine demanding his rent money. Police arrived to find a sweaty man guarding the screen. The officer simply pressed the cancel button. The dad nearly fainted from relief. 2. A stubborn elderly man marched into customer service holding a dusty printer under his arm. It was missing the box and the cables were gone. He slammed it on the counter and demanded a full cash refund immediately. The young employee politely explained that returns require a receipt and the original packaging. The man turned bright red with rage. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911 right in front of the line. He screamed that he was currently being robbed in broad daylight by a gang of thieves. Officers rushed to the scene expecting a heist. They found the grandpa arguing about store credit. The police were furious. The man left the store still holding his broken printer. 3. A hysterical woman stood in the parking lot screaming that her luxury sedan had been stolen by a professional syndicate. She dialed 911 and sobbed that her life was ruined because the car contained all her valuables. 2 patrol cars arrived with sirens blaring to investigate the grand theft auto. The officers asked her to hop in so they could canvass the area for suspects. They drove exactly 50 feet to the very next aisle. There sat her car untouched and perfectly parked. She had simply forgotten where she left it. The officers stared at her in silence. She did not apologize. She just hopped out and drove away, while the cops questioned their career choices. 4. It was Thanksgiving morning, and the stress was high for one frantic grandmother. She arrived at the supercenter expecting to buy a 20-pound bird for her family feast. The freezer section was completely empty. She refused to believe the stock boy who said they were sold out. She dialed 911 and demanded immediate police intervention. She told the dispatcher that the store was hoarding turkeys in the back room illegally. She wanted a SWAT team to raid the stock room and release the poultry. The dispatcher had to explain that a lack of turkey is not a police matter. The grandma hung up and started yelling at the manager instead. The family likely ate ham that year. 5. A self-proclaimed animal rights activist spotted a golden retriever sitting inside a parked SUV. She immediately assumed the worst and decided to be a hero. She called 911 screaming that a dog was roasting to death in a hot vehicle. Firefighters and police rushed to the scene prepared to smash a window. They approached the vehicle cautiously. They realized the engine was actually running and the air conditioning was blasting ice-cold air. The dog was sitting comfortably in the driver's seat listening to the radio. The dog looked happier than the officers did. The woman was lectured on checking for engine noise before calling in the cavalry. The dog just wagged its tail at the drama. 6. A grumpy old uncle with too much time on his hands was watching the register like a hawk. The cashier handed him his change, but the man was convinced he was shorted exactly 4 cents. The cashier apologized but said the register was correct. The man refused to move and blocked the entire line. He pulled out his flip phone and called the police to report a theft in progress. He told the officers he would not leave until a detective counted every penny in the drawer. The police arrived and handed the man a nickel from their own pocket just to make him leave. The man took the nickel and walked away, feeling like he won a major victory. 7. A perfectionist shopper was watching his groceries be bagged with intense scrutiny. The tired teenager at the register accidentally placed a heavy can of soup on top of a loaf of soft white bread. The shopper saw the squished loaf and gasped in horror. He did not ask for a new loaf. He dialed 911 to report malicious destruction of private property. He told the operator that the employee had violently attacked his groceries. Police arrived thinking a fight had broken out. They found a man pointing at a flattened bread bag as if it were a crime scene. The officer told him to go get another loaf. The man left muttering about pressing charges. 8. A wealthy senior citizen finished her shopping trip but realized she had made a terrible mistake. She had parked her luxury convertible at the very back of the lot. It was a sunny day, and she decided the walk was simply too dangerous for her comfort. She called 911 and requested a police escort to her vehicle. She explained to the baffled dispatcher that it was too hot to walk that far without protection. She expected an officer to drive her to her car, like a taxi service. The dispatch operator politely informed her that fatigue is not an emergency. She eventually walked to her car while complaining to everyone she passed about the lack of service. 9. A desperate young man ran into the store restroom with a serious emergency. He found that all the stalls were currently occupied by other shoppers. He waited for 2 minutes, but his patience ran out quickly. He pulled out his smartphone and dialed 911 from the sink area. He reported a severe public health hazard inside the store, and he hoped the police would arrive and forcibly evict the people using the toilets so he could take his turn. Officers arrived and were confused to find a man doing a potty dance by the sinks. They told him to wait his turn like an adult. He ran to the garden center instead. 10. A conspiracy theorist was loading his truck when he noticed a bird staring at him. He became convinced that the government was watching his every move. He called 911 and whispered that a surveillance drone was tracking him near the cart return. He claimed it was disguised as a biological entity. Police sent a patrol car to check on the suspicious activity. The officer found the man hiding behind his truck tire, pointing at a seagull. The bird was just eating an old French fry off the pavement. The officer explained that the bird was hungry and not a spy. But the man drove away, checking his rearview mirror for more flying robots. 11. A frugal suburban mom arrived at the checkout counter with a cart full of cleaning supplies. She proudly handed the cashier a crumbled coupon for 50 cents off bleach. The cashier scanned it and noticed the expiration date was from the year 2012. The manager explained they could not accept a coupon that expired a decade ago. The woman became furious and accused the store of stealing her future savings. She dialed 911 to report a grand larceny in progress at the register. She screamed at the operator that her financial rights were being violated. Police arrived to find her waving the paper scrap like a flag. The officers advised her to pay the 50 cents. She left vowing to sue everyone involved. 12. A strict rule-following school teacher was waiting in the express lane with her basket. She counted the items of the man standing in front of her. He had exactly 15 items in a lane clearly marked for 10 or fewer. She felt this was a breakdown of society and law. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911 to report a maniac on the loose. She told the dispatcher that a dangerous criminal was openly breaking the law in the checkout area. Police rushed over expecting a violent situation. They found a confused guy holding extra frozen pizzas. The officer explained that bad math is not an arrestable offense. The teacher was asked to calm down. The man bought his pizzas in peace. 13. A young car enthusiast parked his brand new sports car in the lot far away from everyone else. He returned to find a stray shopping cart resting gently against his rear bumper. He inspected the paint and found a microscopic scratch that was barely visible. He called 911 immediately and demanded a forensic team sent to the scene. He insisted the officers dust the cart handle for fingerprints to track down the vandal. He shouted that justice must be served for his damaged property. The responding officer looked at the cart and then at the tiny scratch. He explained they do not run forensics on shopping carts. The man drove away weeping over his slightly imperfect bumper. The officer just laughed at him. 14. An elderly woman on a motorized scooter was zooming through the dairy section with great speed. Another shopper on a scooter turned the corner and cut her off near the milk. Their baskets bumped lightly and they came to a sudden halt. The woman was outraged by this reckless driving. She called 911 to report a serious traffic collision involving two vehicles. She demanded an officer come to the store to write a traffic ticket and exchange insurance information. The police arrived to find two seniors arguing over who had the right of way. The officer told them the rules of the road do not apply to the cheese aisle. They raced away in opposite directions. The officer shook his head. 15. A confident teenager walked up to the register with a case of cheap beer. The cashier asked for his identification and saw he was clearly under 21. She refused the sale and took the beer away. The teen was shocked that she would say no to him. He dialed 911 and requested an officer to enforce store policy. He argued to the dispatcher that the customer is always right and that supersedes state law. Police arrived and the boy smiled, thinking they were there to help him. The officers laughed and called his parents instead. His father arrived to pick him up. The boy learned that the customer is not right when breaking the law. He went home grounded. 16. A bargain hunter found a blender on the shelf for $50. He saw the same blender was $10 cheaper on a website. The store manager refused to match the online price because it was a third-party seller. The man was insulted by this rejection. He called 911 and demanded a deputy come to the store to arrest the manager for fraud. He claimed it was illegal to sell something for more than the internet price. The police arrived and explained that high prices are not a crime. The man stood there showing his phone screen to the officer. He eventually bought the blender anyway because he did not want to wait for shipping. The officer left the store confused. 17. A middle-aged woman asked a teenage employee where to find the peanut butter. The teen pointed to the aisle and rolled his eyes while sighing heavily. The woman felt deeply attacked by his attitude. She stepped aside and dialed 911 to report a disorderly conduct incident. She told the operator that a staff member was being verbally abusive and aggressive. She wanted him arrested for threatening behavior in the workplace. Officers arrived and interviewed the bored teenager. He was just tired from his shift. The police told the woman that being rude is not against the law. She demanded the officer's badge number for not taking her side. The teen just went back to stocking jelly. The woman left in a huff. 18. A determined family sent their grandmother ahead to secure a parking spot on a busy Saturday. The older woman unfolded a lawn chair and sat directly in the center of an empty space. A driver tried to pull in, but she refused to move an inch. She called 911 on her flip phone to report a vehicle trying to run her over. She told the police she had squatters' rights to the asphalt because she was there first. The responding officer found a line of cars honking at a lady reading a magazine. He politely asked her to fold up her chair. She argued that she was a vehicle. She eventually moved to the sidewalk. The family arrived too late for the spot. 19. A bored 10-year-old boy wandered off from his parents in the paper goods aisle. He built a massive fort out of toilet paper rolls and crawled inside. He thought it would be funny to call 911 and whisper that he was trapped in a dark cave. The dispatcher took the call seriously and traced the location to the store. Firefighters rushed in with axes and rescue gear, expecting a collapse. They found the kid giggling inside a wall of double-ply tissue. The parents were mortified when they saw the first responders surrounding their son. The boy was grounded for a month. The firefighters just shook their heads and rebuilt the toilet paper display. The parents paid the bill. 20. A young couple was arguing loudly next to the Frosted Flakes. The boyfriend decided he had enough and broke up with her right there. He walked away and drove off, leaving her stranded. The heartbroken girl sat on the floor sobbing uncontrollably. She dialed 911 and told the dispatcher she was in distress. When the officer arrived, she explained her boyfriend dumped her and she needed a ride home. She thought the police were a free taxi service for sad people. The officer handed her a tissue and explained they do not give rides for breakups. She had to call her mom to pick her up. It was a very awkward ride home for everyone involved. The officer drove away. 21. An angry man stood staring at his receipt with intense suspicion. The sales tax had pushed his total slightly higher than the sticker price on the shelf. He became convinced the machine was rigged by a corrupt government plot. He refused to leave the store and dialed 911 on his phone. He reported a federal crime involving illegal taxation without representation. He demanded the police come and inspect the software code of the register. The officers arrived to find a man shouting about the Constitution to a tired cashier. The cop explained how state taxes work. The man refused to believe him. He left claiming he would write a letter to the president. The cashier just wanted to go home. 22. A short woman was struggling to reach a bottle of detergent on the top shelf. She saw a tall man standing nearby and asked him to grab it for her. The man ignored her because he was wearing headphones and didn't work there. She became enraged at his refusal to provide customer service. She called 911 and reported a lazy employee who was refusing to work. She described the man as insubordinate and rude. Police arrived and tapped the man on the shoulder. He took off his headphones and was confused. The officer explained he was just a shopper like her. The woman turned red and ran away. The man finally grabbed his own detergent. 23. A panicked voice screamed into the phone that they were trapped inside a hot vehicle. The dispatcher asked if the doors were jammed or if there was an accident. The caller shouted that the electronics had failed and they couldn't get out. They were parked in the store lot and fearing for their life. Police were dispatched for a rescue mission. The dispatcher then asked the caller to try pulling up the manual lock peg on the door. There was a moment of silence on the line. The caller mumbled that the door opened. They hung up immediately out of shame. The police were called off. The caller likely never told anyone about their moment of genius. 24. A frantic husband dialed 911, shouting that his wife had been abducted from the store, and he had been waiting by the front door for 20 minutes, and she never came out. He was convinced she was taken against her will. Police units rushed to the scene to lock down the perimeter. They began searching the aisles for a struggle. An officer found the wife inside a fitting room, trying on a pair of jeans. Her phone was on silent in her purse. She was completely fine and annoyed that he called the cops. The husband stood there looking sheepish. The police told them to communicate better. The wife bought the jeans and drove him home in silence. 25. A terrified shopper called 911, whispering that people were living in the ceiling tiles. He claimed he could hear voices and footsteps directly above the dairy aisle. He was convinced it was a secret society hiding in the roof. Police arrived and cleared the area to investigate the disturbance. They climbed a ladder to inspect the ceiling crawl space. They found absolutely no one up there. The noise was just the heavy vibration of the old air conditioning unit rattling the tiles. The man insisted ghosts were real and hiding from the law. The officer suggested he get some sleep. The HVAC system continued to hum loudly. The man left the store looking up suspiciously. 26. A determined bargain hunter wanted a set of discounted lawn chairs that were out of stock. The manager offered a rain check, but the customer felt that wasn't legally binding enough. He called 911 to file an official police report about the missing inventory. He wanted a sworn statement from an officer to prove to corporate he deserved the chairs later. When the dispatcher tried to explain that retail stock issues are not legal matters, the man refused to listen and waited for a patrol car. The arriving officer told him to take the paper slip or leave. The man took the slip while muttering about his rights. The officer added a note to the file about wasting time. 27. A lazy customer parked right in front of the pharmacy entrance wearing plaid pajamas. He did not want to get out of his car because it was cold outside. He saw the drive-thru window was closed for maintenance. He called 911 and asked if an officer could force the pharmacist to open the window for him. He claimed it was a medical emergency because he needed his cough drops. The dispatcher informed him that police do not control pharmacy hours or operations. He argued that his comfort was a public safety issue, and the police did not come. He eventually walked inside in his slippers. Everyone stared at his bunny pajamas. He got his medicine and left. 28. A man finished a massive grocery haul and pushed 2 full carts to the curb. He checked his rideshare app and saw the prices were surging high. He spotted a police car parked near the entrance and had a brilliant idea. He called 911 and requested a courtesy ride home for him and his groceries. He told the dispatcher that since the officers were already there, it would save gas. He explained that taxis were too expensive for a taxpayer. The officer in the car walked over and tapped on his shoulder. He laughed and told the man they are not a taxi service. The man had to pay for the expensive Uber. The cop watched him load the car. 29. A clumsy shopper was walking down the cleaning aisle and saw a yellow, wet floor sign. She stepped around it but tripped over her own feet. She did not fall down, but she stumbled slightly. She immediately called 911 to report an assault by the janitor's equipment. She claimed the sign had attacked her and caused emotional distress. She wanted the janitor arrested for placing the sign in her path. Police arrived to find a woman standing next to a plastic cone demanding justice. The officer reviewed the security footage. It showed she clearly walked into the stationary sign. The officer told her to watch where she was going. She left without buying anything. 30. A mechanic wannabe bought a new car battery and carried it to the parking lot. He popped his hood and tried to install it himself to save money. And he realized he had no tools and no idea what he was doing. He became frustrated and dialed 911. He reported the store for selling him a defective and difficult product. He wanted an officer to come and force the auto center to install it for free. The dispatcher explained that buying a part does not include labor. The man sat on his bumper waiting for help that never came. He eventually had to pay a tow truck. He learned that some things are best left to professionals. 31. A paranoid man in a trench coat used the store ATM to withdraw $20. The machine dispensed the cash perfectly, but failed to print a paper receipt. The man stared at the screen in disbelief. He did not ask a manager for help. He dialed 911 to report a broken binding contract. He told the dispatcher that the bank had violated their legal agreement, and police arrived to find him holding his $20 tightly. He demanded a forensic investigation into the printer ink levels. The officer told him to check his banking app. The man refused and said paper is the only proof. He left the store warning everyone about the rogue machine. 32. A lonely middle-aged man walked into the superstore expecting a warm welcome. The elderly greeter was busy wiping a cart and did not say hello to him. The man stopped in his tracks and felt deeply offended. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911 immediately. He reported a severe violation of store policy requiring law enforcement intervention. He told the operator that his civil rights to a greeting were ignored. Officers arrived and spoke to the confused greeter. The police explained that politeness is not a legal requirement, and then the man demanded the greeter be fired on the spot. The officer told the man to keep moving. The greeter just waved at the police instead. 33. A confused woman made a shady transaction behind the garden center dumpsters. She handed over cash for a bag of what she thought was crystal meth. She tested the product immediately and realized it was just rock salt. She was furious about being ripped off by the dealer. She called 911 without a second thought. She told the dispatcher she wanted to file a report for consumer fraud. Officers arrived, and she proudly showed them the fake drugs as evidence. She demanded they find the dealer and get her money back. The police handcuffed her instead for attempting to buy narcotics. She was shocked that the police were not on her side. The dealer got away. 34. A fashionista decided to try on a glittery party dress that was clearly 2 sizes too small. She forced the zipper up and suddenly realized she could not move her arms. The fabric was tight, and she was completely trapped inside the garment. She was too embarrassed to shout for a store associate. She used her fingertips to dial 911 from the dressing room. She whispered that she needed an emergency extraction team. Firefighters arrived with the jaws of life, thinking someone was pinned under a car. They found a woman stuck in polyester. They had to cut the dress off her body. She had to pay for the ruined dress. She left wearing her gym clothes. 35. A nervous shopper was browsing the aisle when he saw a figure holding a weapon. He dove behind a display of canned beans and dialed 911 in a panic. He screamed that a gunman was walking freely through the toy section. Police swarmed the building with tactical gear ready for a standoff. They cornered the suspect near the board games. It turned out to be a 7-year-old boy holding a bright orange foam dart blaster. The kid was just asking his mom to buy it. The caller was pulled out from behind the beans. The officer explained the difference between plastic toys and real danger. The mom was not amused by the SWAT team. 36. A forgetful young man stood at the checkout with a cart full of frozen pizzas. He swiped his debit card, but his mind went completely blank. He could not remember his 4-digit PIN number. He tried 3 times and locked himself out. He refused to call his bank for a reset. He dialed 911 and asked for a cyber crimes unit. Meant he wanted the police to use their hacking tools to override the card reader. He told the dispatcher it was an emergency because his pizza was melting. Officers arrived and told him they cannot hack bank terminals. He had to leave the groceries behind. He walked out hungry and confused about police capabilities. 37. A bold customer went to the photo center to pick up his vacation prints. The clerk refused to hand over the envelope because the images were extremely inappropriate. The store policy strictly banned printing explicit content. The man became enraged and slammed his fist on the counter. He called 911 to report a violation of the Constitution. He claimed his First Amendment rights were being censored by the photo lab employee. Police arrived to mediate the dispute. The officer looked at one photo and immediately closed the envelope. He told the man that private stores can refuse service. The man left shouting about freedom. The clerk shredded the photos while the officer watched. 38. A confident thief managed to walk out of the store with a 60-inch television. He had not paid for it and successfully bypassed the greeter. He reached his getaway car only to find a completely flat rear tire. He did not know how to change it, and panic set in. He dialed 911 and asked for roadside assistance. He hoped the officer would help him fix the tire so he could leave. The police arrived and noticed the brand new TV in the back seat. They asked to see the receipt. The man realized his mistake too late. The officer handcuffed him and then called a tow truck. The TV was returned to the shelf. For 39. An elderly woman wandered the aisles for 20 minutes looking for canned peaches. She could not find a single employee to help her navigate the store. She felt abandoned and decided to take drastic action. She pulled out her ancient cell phone and dialed 911 for directory assistance. She asked the emergency operator which aisle contained the fruit cups. The dispatcher was stunned by the request. She explained that 911 is not a customer service hotline. A patrol officer was nearby and checked on her welfare. He walked her to aisle 4 and found the peaches. He gently told her to ask a shopper next time. She thanked him and complained about the lack of service. 40. A teenage influencer was in the middle of filming a viral dance video in the cereal aisle. Suddenly, the free store internet connection stopped working completely. He could not upload his masterpiece to the cloud. He felt this was a direct attack on his career. He called 911 to report a civil emergency. He told the operator that the infrastructure had collapsed and he needed immediate technical support. Police arrived expecting a power outage or disaster. They found a boy holding a ring light and crying about his followers. The officer told him to use his data plan. The teen was horrified at the suggestion. The police left while he tried to find a signal. 41. A wealthy woman in designer heels swiped her platinum card for a single bottle of water. The machine beeped loudly and displayed a decline message. She was visibly shaken and offended. She knew she had millions in the bank. She dialed 911 to report defamation of character. She claimed the credit card terminal was slandering her good name publicly. She demanded an officer come and arrest the machine for lying. Police arrived to find a woman screaming at a plastic screen. The officer suggested she call her bank instead. It turned out her card was locked for fraud protection. She realized she was the fraud. She left without the water. 42. A confused man walked out to the parking lot and approached a silver sedan. He He pressed his key fob repeatedly, but the door would not open. He pulled on the handle, but it was locked tight. He was convinced a thief had hacked his car's computer. He called 911 to report a stolen vehicle that was right in front of him. Police arrived and asked him to check the license plate. He looked down and realized it was not his car at all. His identical car was parked 2 rows over. The stranger's car was safe. The man apologized profusely. The officer told him to memorize his license plate next time. He drove away in shame. 43. A hungry shopper bought a frozen pizza and walked straight into the employee break room. He opened the microwave and started cooking his lunch without permission. A staff member found him and asked him to leave the private area. The man refused and claimed he had rights as a paying customer. He called 911 to report harassment by the staff. He told the dispatcher he was being denied the right to eat. Police arrived and found the man eating a slice of pepperoni next to the time clock. The officer escorted him out of the building. He was banned from the store. He finished his pizza in the parking lot alone. 44. A frantic caller reported they were being held hostage inside a massive building. They claimed there were no exits and they were trapped in a maze. The dispatcher traced the call to a retail location. Police rushed to the scene, ready to breach the doors. They found the caller wandering in circles near the electronics section. The officer asked why they couldn't find the door. The caller admitted they were looking for a blue sign, but everything was red. The officer realized the caller thought they were in Walmart. They were actually inside a Target store. The officer pointed to the giant red bullseye. The caller walked out in silence. 45. A tired man found a comfortable recliner in the furniture department. He sat down to rest his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. An employee woke him up after an hour and asked him to move along. The man woke up angry and disoriented. He dialed 911 to report physical harassment. He told the operator that a stranger had touched him while he was sleeping. Police arrived to find a groggy man refusing to leave the chair. The officer explained that a store is not a hotel. The man argued that the chair was too comfortable to be legal. He was escorted out yawning. The employee put a sold sign on the chair. 46. A nervous customer was shopping peacefully when a loud announcement blared over the intercom. The voice said "Code Blue" in aisle 4. But the customer immediately assumed it was a military code for a bomb threat. He dropped his basket and ran to the exit, screaming. He called 911 and reported an imminent explosion. He told the dispatcher to evacuate the entire city block. Police and fire units swarmed the store. They found a janitor mopping up a spilled gallon of milk. The code blue just meant a dry spill. The customer was found hiding behind a dumpster. The officer explained the color codes. The man went home without his groceries. 47. A thirsty shopper put a crisp dollar bill into the soda machine near the entrance. The machine made a noise, but the bottle of Mountain Dew did not fall. The man waited 10 seconds and then lost his temper. He kicked the machine and then dialed 911. He reported a robbery in progress. And he told the dispatcher that a machine had taken his money and refused to deliver the goods. Police arrived to find a man shouting at a glass box. The officer gave the man $1 from his own wallet. The man took it and walked away happy. The officer put an out-of-order sign on the machine. 48. A cautious man was shopping when a sudden thunderstorm started outside. He heard the thunder and became paralyzed with fear. He finished his shopping but refused to walk to his car. He called 911 and requested a police escort for weather protection. He wanted an officer to monitor the storm cells while he loaded his trunk. The dispatcher explained that rain is not a police matter. The man argued that getting wet was a safety hazard. He waited inside by the door for 2 hours until the sun came out, and the employees watched him pacing back and forth. He finally left when the pavement was dry. 49. A terrified woman was walking through the sporting goods section alone. She turned a corner and saw a figure lying face down on the floor. She screamed and immediately dialed 911. She reported a dead body in aisle 12. She was crying and told the operator it was a crime scene. Paramedics and police rushed into the store with a stretcher. They found a mannequin dressed in hunting gear that had tipped over. The plastic arm was twisted at an odd angle. The first responders started laughing. The woman was humiliated. The manager stood the mannequin back up. The officer told the dummy to be more careful. The woman ran out the door. If we learned anything today, it's that common sense is permanently out of stock for some people. From arresting seagulls to calling the SWAT team for a sold-out turkey, the bar for humanity just hit the floor. If these stories made you feel like a genius, do me a favor and smash that like button, share this with a friend who needs a laugh, and subscribe to Brainfumble for more daily madness. Turn on those notifications because you don't want to miss what happens next. Now hit the comments. Which caller was the absolute worst? The woman trapped in the dress or the guy reporting the ghost? Let me know.